Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. Obviously, we go through all the news you need to know about, then we answer fans' questions, and obviously we go through the box score as well. So if you like that, hopefully you'll stick around. And today's first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors, as it always does. The Dolphins have traded running back Kenyon Drake to the Arizona Cardinals. Again, this comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Cardinals have reached an agreement on a trade to acquire Dolphins running back Kenyon Drake. Adam Schefter of ESPN.com tweets, in the deal, the Dolphins will acquire a conditional 6th-round pick in 2020 that can become a 5th rounder. So the conditional pick that could become a 5th rounder, but it's a 6th rounder for now, if that makes a little bit more sense. Yeah, that's basically it. And it goes on to say how it's going to help the Cardinals out. So we could have gotten a higher draft pick, even though he does play the running back position. But the fact that he was under contract, this is basically like pretty much renting a player for basically half a season. So you would normally see a team that's a contender do this. It's really odd that the Cardinals are doing this. It seems like a terrible move to me if I'm the Cardinals. Because you're not going to go to the playoffs, especially with how stacked the NFC is. There's just too many good teams, and you're definitely not one of them. Very odd trade, but yeah, we could have gotten higher, obviously, compensation for him. I understood when Chris Greer came out and Brian came out and said, we're not actively trying to get rid of Kenyon Drake, because it makes sense. Like, what are you going to get in return for him? I'm not that concerned with him leaving, but all in all, I think what ended up happening, regardless if the Dolphins got a 7th-round pick or not, they pretty much got something where they were going to get nothing for him anyway. He was probably going to leave this next upcoming season anyway. So it was actually a pretty decent job by the Dolphins at, not letting him walk for nothing, and they got some compensation for it. But he is a talented player. It sucks to see him go because he is a talented player. Maybe he's not a starting back per se, I guess, in this league, but he does everything, in my opinion, pretty good. And just another good player the Dolphins have lost over this roster purge that's happened. This next news story comes again from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins activate Robert Nkemdiche off of the physically unable to perform list. Second chance, Robert Nkemdiche's second chance could begin Monday night. The Dolphins activated the former 1st-round pick. Robert suffered an ACL last season and reported to Cardinals camp in less than ideal shape. Cardinals cut him, and the Dolphins took a flyer out on the former 1st-round pick. So I don't think he played in Monday night's game. I'm really tired right now, and coming off that game, it's kind of exhaustingly tough. It's just a tough game as a fan to come off of. But I don't think he played last night. I don't know. He could have. I just didn't see him. But yeah, this is good news for the Dolphins because it doesn't. Not necessarily that he's going to come in and make a huge impact, but with this team just needs rotation desperately. Like, we're very thin at that position, especially with all the injuries. Pretty sure Avery Moss didn't play again tonight, so it was good to add just another pretty good rotational player. I think he's better than what we've had out there, that's for sure. So that's good. So that's a good get for the Dolphins for him to come back and help the team out. Because we're going to talk about it later in the show, but I think this team's #1 need is probably a pass rusher, because it's just this defense would be a lot better if and the scheme would just work more if the pass rush was better, and we weren't forced to blitz to get pressure, because we can't cover on the back end when we blitz, and we can't get pressure with our front four. So it's a big problem right now, and this team desperately needs a high-end pass rusher. Just a higher-end front 7 player. The linebackers are good, but the defensive line is just lacking. It's very bad. It's very poor. Just all around, especially on the edge, I feel like we need players that can affect the game. on the edge. And hopefully he can come in and do that. This next news story, it's the last news story, also comes from Pro Football Rumors. And it's about Xavier Howard. The Dolphins are getting calls about cornerback Xavier Howard. Albert Breer of the Monday Morning Quarterback reports. Howard says he's not seeking a trade, and the Dolphins would do well to keep the 26-year-old for their future plans. No duh. But this could be a Kenyon Drake situation where they're like, well, we're not shopping him, but if we get a deal that we can't, refuse, then we might trade him. It's like, don't do that. He's a special player. He's not just a great player. He's a special player. I mean, just watch the Steelers game and the impact that he had on that game when he was in the game and then when he left the game. When he left the game, Juju Smith-Schuster caught a touchdown. Juju Smith-Schuster got a penalty. Juju Smith-Schuster had 3 third-and-long conversions when he left the game. It absolutely changed the game. Now, the Steelers did move him into the slot, and we'll talk about this. You know what? That's a good segue. Let's move into the box score. The Dolphins fall to the Pittsburgh Steelers 14-27, and we'll start with the defense because we were just talking about it. Let's start with the stat line. Mason Rudolph finished 20 of 36 passing, 251 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Rushing, James Conner finished 23 carries for 145 yards. Receiving, Juju Smith-Schuster led the pack with 103 yards with 5 receptions and a touchdown. And Deontay Johnson, who's the rookie receiver, finished second receiving with 5 catches and 84 yards. So back to the defensive side of the ball. Again, one of the better stat lines that we've given up all year, if you can believe that. Probably the best. Because in most of our games, we haven't even allowed a 100-yard receiver or a 100-yard rusher. But in this game, we did. But let's talk about the defense for a second. Let's focus on the Dolphins. One of the biggest... There were 2 boneheaded coaching decisions in this game. The first one is the inability to adjust at halftime with this coaching staff. Why we didn't notice? I mean, when we went half, we had to have known, like, okay, they moved him into the slot because they started getting more production, especially on third downs. Like, they were converting third and longs towards the end of the half to go back. And anybody could have watching that game could have, like, they pointed it out on the telecast. They're like, great move by the Steelers removing him into the slot and mashing him up with Nick Needham, or a rookie corner. And that was effective for them. Why our coaching staff didn't... Now, it made it harder when Xavier couldn't come back. But the double teams were gone. Because when Juju Smith-Schuster was on the outside, he was getting double teamed. And then we kind of pulled a New England where we had X on their second best receiver. But we double teamed their number 1 receiver. Which is a smart plan. And it worked. As long as X was out there. But then, they moved him in the slot to counter that, and we just didn't adjust to it, which is very odd. Even though Ryan Lewis had a bad day, you have to try to do something to put a better player on him in that situation. And I felt like the coaching staff didn't have a good enough of a counter to it. Whatever that counter might have been, the lack of adjustments to it was very sad. In my opinion, we didn't even try anything different. We kind of were just relying on Nick to play better, and I felt like that was just stupid because it's your job as a coach to, especially schematically, counter that kind of stuff. And I felt that we failed to do that, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and that really allowed them. And now, let's talk about the play that got them back into the game. So, people are pointing out, why would you send an all-out blitz on 3rd and 20? I'll tell you why they did it. The 3 points that they scored before, I felt was the dumbest thing. We played basically prevent defense. And we conceded the fact that they were going to kick a field goal, which is ridiculous because they were far from field goal range. We should have played way more aggressive and tried to not allow any points. So this time around, we were in the same exact situation before halftime. We were in a 3rd and long situation. They were not in field goal range. This time, Brian Flores is like, listen, they get ball at half. We cannot let them get 3 here. Which is, I thought I would have done the same thing Brian did. And we called an aggressive defense. I'm totally fine with that. The people are like, oh, why would you ever? I love how Booger McFarland was like, well, you concede the field. No, you don't. Especially if the other team gets ball at half. You don't want to concede 3 there. You want to play defense and get off the field. Especially since, I mean, you got to understand the circumstances the defense was in. We were playing Mason Rudolph. This is his first game back in a while. He's been running with the scout team, for God's sakes. He hasn't played a good half up until this point. Let's go get him. And I'm totally fine with that. I would have done the same. If I was the coaches, I would have called the same defense. Here's the problem with this. We call the all-out pressure defense a zero-man play. Basically, everyone is lined up one-on-one. There is no help. Everybody's going after the quarterback here. The way the corners were lined up was just utterly ridiculous. It was like we were playing a soft zone coverage, and we weren't. There was no help in the middle of the field. There was no deep safety. Everyone was going after the quarterback. This is either on the coaching staff or it's on the players, because I can't imagine that the coaching staff was like, just play off for some reason. I don't understand what the heck, because every single one of them were. So basically, I mean, if you watch the play again, I'm sure you guys have seen it 1,000 times at this point because they played it a bajillion times. And I'm sure if you have social media of any kind, you've seen it a million times. But the corner, again, X is like he's playing either a cover 3. It looks like he's playing a cover 3, and he has help shading underneath, and he doesn't. He's on an island. All the receiver has to do, and trust me, everybody's fast in the National Football League. All he has to do is turn. That's it. I don't care who, you would have to be literally the Flash to even get close to the receiver. The alignment of the defense was not the right alignment for the play that was called. It wasn't. No one runs a blitz like that with the corners lined up like that. No one does. You would have to be an idiot to do that. I have no idea. If the corners were pressing in that situation, we would have gotten a sack and got off the field. Steve Young pointed out in the game at halftime that Mason Rudolph struggles with throwing the ball over the middle. They're not going to throw a comeback on a zero-man blitz or an out route or something like that. They're not. It's either going to be a go route or something inside. And he has struggled with that to this point. He's been clearly rattled in the pocket. We would have gotten off the field if they pressed. That's all they had to do. It had nothing to do with the call. I love the call. People aren't thinking about the circumstances. We all watched that game. Okay, they were moving the ball. As soon as Xavier and Howard got out, as soon as they moved Juju Smith into the slot, they were moving the football. And they were able to run the ball since the beginning of the game. They just were down by so much that it didn't affect the defense as much. But when the game's close like that, obviously the run game is definitely more prominent. So I am completely okay with the call. It's just I don't understand whose fault it is. I don't know if it's the players, they didn't do what they were supposed to do or they were told, or the coaching staff literally taught them the wrong way to play that defense. I don't know whose fault it is. And again, I like the call. It was just executed very poorly. And it didn't make any dang sense to me. Now, you could make the argument not to play the soft zone and maybe just play like a cover 2 or something like that and have 4 or 5. I don't like a 5-man rush, but like a 4-down lineman. Because if you're going to blitz, you got to blitz. You can't do halfway, in my opinion. Something like that. But again, the Dolphins don't have pass rushers, and that's been a bad, a very, 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 what do I want to say? It's been a very obvious thing the entire season. One of the Dolphins' shortcomings is their defensive line. Vince Biegel is their best, I would say, edge player on the team, and he is, he's just a I'll outwork you type of a guy. He doesn't have any real get off. He doesn't have a power move. Like, he doesn't scare you if you're, preparing for pass protection in this game. So yeah, those are the 2 biggest plays of the game on defense, in my opinion. Not adjusting to Juju Smith-Schuster, and then I like the call. I just don't understand the alignment of the defense for that play call. It didn't make any sense to me. So, yeah, I feel like those were by far the 2 biggest plays. Now, if you want to make an argument that, before we move on to some players that I thought, I guess, played well, and another play that I felt like on defense that could have changed the game, if you want to move if you want to make an argument against what I'm saying in terms of, well, why would you do that? You could just concede for 3. All this other stuff. Or you could say, well, there's other ways to be more aggressive there's other ways to be aggressive without that amount of aggressiveness. Like I said, you could just do a 4-man rush and drop everybody back, and either it's going to be deflected or whatever. You could have played a 2-man under. It doesn't really matter. You probably could have done a little bit of a regular, like you would call like a regular defense on a 2nd down or something like that. You're not trying to give up a ton of yards. You know what I'm saying? I could see that argument too. But the way this defense has been passed, right? Like I understand the reasoning behind and the feeling that I have to bring pressure here. Because the defensive line, like I have said a million times so far, and you wonder why the Dolphins kept sending that blitz all the time in crucial situations, is because it's bad. It's really, 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 really bad. We do not have a pass rusher on this team. That is the worst part of the defense right now. The second is obviously the lack of depth in the secondary, but the lack of a pass rusher on this team it's just not very good, and the lack of just defensive line talent in general is not very good. So, yeah, but now before we move on to the offensive side of the football, I want to point out I thought Jerome Baker had a very, very, very good game. He made a lot of really good open field tackles. He was very good. I mean, he was moving their guard around like he was, a defensive lineman. He played a very good game in my opinion. In terms of some other, when Xavier was in there, he was very special. He gave up one bad first down where we had them backed up on their goal line, but other than that, he played absolutely lights out. Vince Beagle had a solid game. He hustled a lot. That's about it on defense, really. Ryan Lewis started off really well, and then just kind of, as soon as Xavier left, obviously the game plan was pretty much blown to shreds after that. It was very clear on defense that X was a huge part, and he's a very big part of this defense, and it showed on Sunday. His impact on the game. But right before we get into the offense, there was another big play in the game that would have completely changed it. I cannot remember the score, but it was either we were down by, maybe it was 17-14 at the time. It might have been 17-14, or this is before, what was it at halftime? 10-14. It might have been 10-14 at the time. I'm not sure, but it was one of the two. And Eric Rowe had a gift of a pick. Like, the easiest interception anyone could ever have in their life. It was lobbed in the middle of the field to a receiver, or a tight end, Vance McDonald, who was not open. And it was underthrown. It was like a lollipop. Like if I tossed you a wiffle ball or something like that. There was no contested anything on it either. He just dropped it. Like there's some, and not only that, but there were multiple times in run fits, in the run defense on Monday, where he just either missed the tackle or just completely whiffed on his assignment. He continues, and last week I gave him props because he actually played well, but I don't understand what his problem is. He's in positions to make plays. He just doesn't make them. It's unbelievable, dude. It's not like someone's beating him. Either he doesn't get his head around if he's playing corner, he's holding someone, or he's dropping a pick, or he's missing a tackle, or he's not where he's supposed to be. Eric Rowe is he's just bad. I don't get it. Eric Rowe, he is on Jamar Taylor level at bad. Like, he is bad, dude. He's just bad. I don't understand it, dude. He was, like I said, the easiest pick you could ever want. And it just was, that could have completely changed the game. Let's get into the offensive side of the football. More than any stat that I'm going to read you right now, the 4 turnovers, and I think, 5 if you count the turnover on downs maybe, was huge in this game, and the difference in this game. Again, Ryan Fitzpatrick finished 21 for 34, 190 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Rushing, Mark Walton led the way with 11 carries for 35 yards. Receiving, Devontae Parker and Preston Williams both had 59 and 42 yards. Preston had the 42. Devontae had the 59. Okay, I don't even really care about the stats. Let's just talk about the offense. Number one. Number one, okay? Just the boneheaded mistakes this offensive team as a unit makes are unbelievable. We had a chance to get back into the game, and Mark Walton fumbles the football. Okay? If that doesn't just, in a nutshell, take a picture of it, put it on your wall, describe the season of the Dolphins, it's unreal. They just shot themselves in the foot again for the second week in a row. And without all these the turnovers that were actually crucial in this game, who knows where we would be in this game? I mean, they were absolutely crucial. We were driving. We were down 27-14 at the time. I have zero confidence that Mason Rudolph is going to run out the clock if we score here. We had, when he fumbled, I think we had 3 minutes left exactly on the clock. We would have punted the ball back. We would have had an opportunity to get the ball back with plenty of time to take the lead back. We would not have had to onside kick the ball. And Mark Walton fumbles the ball. You know, and then Ryan Fitzpatrick, who, by the way, actually had a pretty good game. You know, both interceptions were not his fault. Nick O'Leary, I don't know what Nick O'Leary, he was wide open. Wide open. It's like, maybe it's because of years of playing with terrible quarterbacks. I really don't know, but he turns around and the ball's on him. He's like, I've never had this happen to me before, and the ball flips up into the air, and, you know, it was intercepted. I mean, that was just great anticipation by Ryan Fitzpatrick. Put him on. Ryan did a great job. We would have had a first down. The Steelers would have never gotten the ball back before halftime. You know, or was it before halftime? Was it before halftime? I think that interception was before halftime. I'm not sure. Or maybe that was the first drive to score. I can't remember. But it was a huge... Regardless, points would not have been scored. And then obviously Mika Fitzpatrick picks it off on the tip. Stuff like that, man. That's the stuff I'm talking about. Just the failure to do the little things. You know, Preston Williams drops... You know, he, by the way, was catching everything earlier in the game. But, you know, he drops a 4 to 5 yard route. You know, the Dolphins end up going offsides on that particular drive. You know, it makes everything that much harder. It's just the stuff that, you know, it hurts the team. You know, the 4th and 1 call, I mean, again, whether you want, I mean, it was just unlucky. I like the call. The spot was, I think, bad because I felt like we were a little bit closer than that. But it was like 1.5 to 2 yards, and it was like a 4th and 2. And I understand why we didn't run the football because our offensive line. I mean, we're not going to block Cameron Hayward. We would have gotten hit. Devin Bush would have hit or shot a gap and hit us. So I'm totally fine with what they did. And I live with the. I mean, when you go, you have to understand if you go for it on 4th down, you have to live with the fact that but you might not get it. That's a part of going for it on 4th down. I hate when people like, why would you go for it? It's because we wouldn't even talking about this if we got it. So I really don't count that, really. I mean, it is what it is. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. I was totally fine with the play design. It didn't work. Whatever. The Steelers are a well-coached team. But, you know, it is what it is, dude. The offense shot themselves in the face. You know, like I said, the Nick O'Leary play, the Mark Walton fumble, the Ryan Fitzpatrick fumble, you know, just too many turnovers, too many mental mistakes. Behind all of that, though, I felt like, again, Ryan Fitzpatrick had a good game. You know, had the no-look pass to Jakeem Grant. You know, he had a excuse my dogs. He had a lot of big 3rd and long conversions that were all him. He was scrambling. He stepped up in the pocket. He got rid of the ball when he had pressure. He did a really good job of avoiding sacks pretty much for the entire game. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick really had a solid game if it wasn't just for some unlucky things that happened. You know, this team is just not good enough for those things. I mean, that just kills you. Taking a first down away, and it pops up in the air, and it's an interception, stuff like that. You know, and then the Ryan Lewis pass interference call that wasn't. Again, we had calls that went our way with the offensive pass interference and everything, but they ended up scoring on that anyway. So, you know, it didn't matter. So it is what it is, dude. It is what it is. I really don't know what else to say. I will say this, though. The one thing that I think the player that played the best in this game, believe it or not, was Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm not even joking around. I really don't have any issue with how he played. I felt like he played a really good game. He did what he had to do for us to win the game. Unfortunately, whatever the spiritual power that hates this team, I really don't know if it's, you know, I don't know. It's just bad luck. Bad teams do this stuff. This is what bad teams do. They do stupid stuff like this. And you could tell the coaching staff was even more frustrated about with everything that happened. And, you know, we should have won this game, but we didn't. And it is what it is. I could point to a million different things that happened on Monday that was, you know, it was unfortunate, dude. All right, let's move on to the fan Q&A. So yeah, let's start with the first question. This first question comes from Beef Fan. He says, "Hey Skags, love the podcast. Do you believe?" He says, do you believe we really need the #1 overall draft pick this upcoming draft?" Yes. I don't know if we need it, but it definitely helps because of, you know, the amount of first round picks that the Dolphins have, and, you know, some of the flexibility that it gives you. You know, you could potentially get Chase Young if you want to pick him 1, or you want to go Tua. But if you do go Chase Young, you can still take Joe Burrow, because you have so much draft equity. You could move up if you need to. So it gives you more flexibility. So you would like to have the first overall. Now I hate saying that. You would like to have it, but you know, it would definitely benefit you for a lot of different reasons. This next question comes from SM. SM says and asks, he says, "We passed on TJ Watt for Charles Harris in 17 thoughts." Yeah, well, back then he didn't really fit the scheme. He was more of an outside linebacker. He was perfect for the Steelers. I mean, he was basically a little baby Kevin Green. And, you know, it ended up working out for them. But, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, dude. It is what it is. This next question comes from Fly Solo. He asks, "Do you believe in this coaching staff? After calling a time in the second quarter, 3rd and 20 with 30 seconds left, and making a dumb call to give up a touchdown and throwing the game away." Yeah, I do believe in it. I don't understand what actually... I would love to if I actually talked to them and they were like, "Yeah, that's how we've practiced that," I would be like, "Are you guys stupid?" That's then yes. You know, I agree with the aggressiveness on that. I just don't understand why the players are lined up like that. I don't know. But I liked what the stuff we call. I understand it. Like, at least it's not Matt Burke, where it's like, why are you doing any of this? Like, you know, Matt Burke was just he was just a bad defensive coordinator. The talent on this team is really it's very poor. I think that has a lot to do with it, and once this team gets some actual people who can push a pocket, then I think things will be very, very different for this defense. I do like the scheme, and I do like the coaches, but, you know, just some of those things, I just can't wait for the explanation for it. I'm not defending them, by the way. I just don't understand. I don't understand what happened on that play. I really don't. This next question comes from Gamerific. He says, "Do we need a running back?" No. Well, I think that's definitely on the need list, very low. Mark Walton's played very well for the situation that he finds himself in. This next question comes from Josh Hart. He asks, "Skaggs, what adjustments do we need to make to beat the Jets on Sunday?" If you can get on the phone and try to call someone to give up some kind of a pass rusher for, like, maybe Derek Wolfe, you can get him for like a 6th round pick, the one you just got from Arizona. That's what you need to do. You need to get someone in this building who can make a difference on the line of scrimmage, on the defensive side of the ball, because there is no one right now that can do that. One more thing I want to add, speaking of adding players, one of the things that this scheme doesn't have is a big linebacker. Chris Collinsworth, I don't remember what game it was, he pointed out a very good point, that the Patriots really like bigger linebackers because it's a mismatch when your running back has to come up in pass protection when you blitz. And it's a great point because that's true. This roster, that's why Raekwon needs to be on the field more on some of those downs, because he is a bigger dude, he's more physical, and he can mow over a running back. But maybe that's something the Dolphins look into down the road, to get a little bit more physical at that position. But what adjustments do we need to make for the Jets on Sunday? They lost their best defensive lineman, Leonard Williams. I don't know if there's any adjustments you really have to make. Hopefully X plays the entire game. Again, I think it just comes down to personnel. If you want to get some guys in here that can actually rush the passer. But any adjustments, I don't think there's any that the Dolphins need to make. It's not a very good football team. So, there you go. We've played way better teams. The Steelers are their defense is alone better than any unit on the Jets. This next question comes from Adam or what? He asks, what should we focus on in the draft position-wise? The top two positions. Number one is defensive line. It just needs to be. There's not enough. There's so many holes on that side of the ball. Defensive line pass rushers need to be a very big emphasis, and even in the secondary needs to be a big emphasis in the draft. The offensive line's playing better. The interior, Shaq Calhoun and Michael Dieter, the Dolphins actually might have a future in those two. I'm not even joking around, which is great. So maybe the offensive line is not as bad. You still need a left tackle, but the interior, it's getting better, which is a good thing. But, the defensive line and the secondary, they need more playmakers. This team needs a true safety. This team needs, again, playmakers on the line. That's where I think the Dolphins need to focus defensively, for sure. But those two positions, quarterback and pass rusher, need to be addressed. Those are the number one things. This next question comes from Josh Hart. Josh Hart asks, what are the three positives we can take from the game going into Sunday? The three positives, Ryan Fitzpatrick is a good quarterback. The guards are getting better. They're developing Shaq Calhoun and Michael Dieter. And the linebackers on this team are talented. Those are your three positives. This next question comes from Gamerific. He asks, do we need a quarterback? Yes, for the future of this team for sure. This next question comes from Thomas. He says, should the Dolphins trade for Trent Williams, depending on if it's a first rounder? No. But, yes, I would. If it wasn't that high of compensation, I definitely would want to get Trent Williams. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, if we take Chase with the first pick, are you willing to give up most of our good draft picks to go back in for Tua, or would you go Rosen 2020 or Lawrence 2021? No, I would take Tua. I love Tua. I think he's a great quarterback. Chase Young is a lot. He's great. He's a great player. And that's what makes that decision that much harder, especially with the season he's having. Living up to expectations, passing expectations. I think he has 13 sacks in 8 games. I think he had 4 sacks against Wisconsin, one of the best teams in the nation. So, yeah, he's the real deal. So, it's going to make it very difficult. This next question comes from SM. He asks, where is the fullback we drafted? He wasn't there when we didn't get the 4th and 1. That's where he was. This next question comes from Josh Hart. He asks, who's our MVP for this game, even though we lost? Oh, man. I would say Ryan Fitzpatrick. This next question comes from Jack Pack 18. He asks, it's a good thing they all have all of those draft picks because they need pretty much everything. But I do not trust this front office to pick well or sign anyone good. Change my mind. Well, hopefully they do change your mind. This next question comes from SM. Or well, you're asking me to change your mind? I can't predict the future, but I think the coaching staff is a good coaching staff. Like the things that they do, the principles, like screen game, some of the things that they call an offense, the running scheme. I like all of it. I think it's good. It just can't. The execution isn't there. Defensively too, it's a good defense. I like the way it's man-based. I've always said that. Even last year, I called for more. I'm a huge fan of man. If all you got to do is watch New England and Denver when they won their Super Bowl. That's all they did was play man coverage and get pressure up front. And that's what we're trying to build down here, and I'm totally cool with that. It's just we don't have the players to execute that at a high level. So hopefully the Dolphins can change their mind, Jack Pack, if they get some of those horses in here and stuff starts clicking. This next question comes from SM. He says, even if we lose Tua, how much would it mean to beat Gase next week? Oh my god, it would mean everything. I cannot wait to play them, dude. It would mean everything. I hope, listen, if this, and I know this show doesn't get like a ton of viewers, but spread the word, get everyone in Miami. I don't care how bad this team is, dude. I want to beat the Jets. Let's all get, everybody go, get the crowd going. We got to beat them. I mean, treat this as our Super Bowl if you want it. Like, this is what we got something to play for on Sunday. This next question comes from Beef. He says, Tua or Chase Young? That's a great question. That's a great question, dude. I mean, the quarterback position is the most important, so I would say Tua. But Chase Young's pretty dang good. This next question comes from Gamerific. He says, do we need an offensive line? This is a joke. The left tackle position is very bad, but I'm encouraged from our two rookie guards. I think they have a good future in this league. This next question comes from Carlos. He says, what are your thoughts on going 0-16? I don't think it's going to happen, but it's going to hurt. That's for sure. This next question comes from Fly Solo. He asks, I want Chase Young with the #1 overall pick. Who would you take? I would take Tua, but I would not be mad if the Dolphins took. I just feel like, in the whole argument that, if he's your guy at the quarterback position, then take him. When the Giants took Daniel Jones, it's not that. It's not just because he plays quarterback is the reason I'm taking him there. It's because I genuinely believe he's going to be a really, 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 really good quarterback on the next level. So that's why I would take Tua. And unfortunately, Chase Young plays a position with less impact, but it's definitely second to quarterback. I would say that. It would be great to get them both, and hopefully we can get them both. Who knows? That would be one heck of a dude. Think about that. The Dolphins take Tua and Chase, dude, and somehow they pull out Jerry Jeudy, the receiver from Alabama. That'd be pretty dope. Or maybe they get CeeDee Lamb, later in the, or who else could they get that's really good? I mean, there's a lot of players that I like, so I'm excited. I'm excited for this draft. This next question comes from Slug. He says, "What did you think of Minka? About Minka? I mean, Minka does Minka things. The two picks you got were kind of lucky." This next question comes from SM. SM asks, what was Booger McFarland so pro-Pittsburgh last night? I don't feel like he was pro-Pittsburgh. He said a lot of nice things about Brian and how he thinks he is the coach of the Dolphins. I don't think he was the pro-Pittsburgh. This next question, I don't like that Monday Night Crew. It's definitely one of my least favorite ones. This next question comes from Julian. He says, "Hey man, thanks for the podcast. Having said that, do you think the Dolphins adjust during the half?" Did they adjust? No, they didn't. That's the one thing that I don't understand. Offensively, I didn't think they had to do too much to adjust, but defensively, it was very odd that they didn't do anything about the whole personnel change with Juju Smith-Schuster. This last question comes from Slugga. He asked, do you think we are intentionally calling bad games in the second half because the league starts looking into our tanking process, so they plan good first halves, then just lay back in the second half? So what's your take? I think that comes with experience. There's not a lot of experience on this coaching staff in terms of being in, like, they're both first-year coordinators and their first-year head coach. So that's something that they're going to get better at. I would hope so as time goes on. And it also has a lot to do with just the personnel being poor. So, but you definitely could have made it. You could have at least tried other things, and they didn't, and it's very odd. For whatever reason, they just didn't do it. I don't know. So it's gonna be a rough season, ladies and gentlemen. It's gonna be really rough from here on out. So it is what it is. It is what it is, dude. It sucks, man. 'Cause, it was a great feeling kicking the heck out of them, at least for almost the entire first half until the end there. But yeah. I don't know what else to really say other than I guess get really excited for the 2020 draft. And hopefully, starting this next decade, the Dolphins, if I actually find a franchise quarterback, have a killer draft and turn this thing around, and for the next, in 2030, hopefully they have one ring at that point. So that is going to be it, guys. I am SkyX1383. We will continue to do these shows. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. If I felt a little monotone in this episode, I apologize for that, but I'm very tired. And I'm going to go to bed. So that is going to be it, guys, for this episode. I am SkyX1383. And I'll see you guys in the next one.